Welcome to the on-demand presentation for PCard training and best practices, presented by your NCTCOG purchasing team and PCard administrators. There's a lot of information to cover, so let's jump right in. The learning objectives that will be covered in this presentation include the rules and responsibilities of a PCard holder, proper and improper uses of the PCard, travel, meals and sales tax reminders, and some overall best practices for cardholders to keep in mind. NCTCOG currently partners with JP Morgan Chase Bank for the PCard program, which allows approved users to purchase goods and services through any vendor that accepts MasterCard as a form of payment. Aside from the convenience and ability for immediate payment, one of the main benefits of the PCard is that it reduces the manual process time and processing costs involved with other forms of payment, such as check requests or requisition to purchase order payments. As you can see, we have several cardholder responsibilities listed here. Anytime we are entrusted with the authority or ability to spend money that is not ours, that also comes with a lot of responsibilities. It is important that all cardholders must read and adhere to all NCTCOG policies, which include purchasing policies, travel policies, and PCard policies. Obtain and maintain detailed receipts for all transactions. Reconcile your card statement each month within the set deadlines. Ensure sales tax is not charged at the time of purchase. Resolve any refunds for product returns or sales tax charged in error in a timely manner, and obtain best value for your department and for the agency. Of course, the main idea here is to use the PCard responsibly. In the previous slide, we mentioned that the cardholder must obtain best value for your department and for the agency. I'd like to focus just a bit on this point, which is pulled directly from the PCard policy in Section 2.4 and reads, by approving the PCard purchase, the cardholder acknowledges that due diligence or a good faith effort was taken to procure the item, and the item selected effectuates a reasonable, fair, and competitive price. What this means is that while there is no requirement for written quotes like the $3,000 plus threshold, it is important that all cardholders complete price checks prior to making any purchase with their card. Essentially, treat the money as if it was your own. If the same item is available from similar vendors like Amazon, Office Depot, and Staples, you want to compare the price at each website and ultimately buy it from the place that has the lowest cost. Why spend more if you don't have to?
Similar to the cardholder responsibilities, there are quite a few potential improper card uses that all cardholders should avoid. Those include purchasing any items for personal use, purchasing alcohol or other prohibited goods and services, splitting purchases to avoid card limits, or purchasing policy requirements, which we will discuss in a later slide. Using the PCard to pay gratuities and sales tax, allowing card use by another individual without supervision, failure to report a lost or stolen card, and failing to submit receipts and reconcile your transactions in a timely manner. This slide potentially presents some good news. There are some limitations automatically set on the card profile to help avoid some of those potential types of misuse we've just discussed. Single transaction limits and monthly cycle limits are set by the department manager or director when a new card is requested. These are pretty self-explanatory in that a single transaction limit will not allow you to make a purchase from a vendor over a set amount. And, while there are no limits to the total number of possible transactions a cardholder could have, the monthly cycle limit will essentially keep a running total and will not allow any transactions that pass the maximum total dollar limit set for each month. We also have an additional profile limitation that is standard agency-wide, and that is the unapproved vendor category limitation. Let's discuss this further. Merchant category codes, or MCCs, are 4-digit codes that identify vendors by category, which all vendors submit when they register their business with the state. Each PCard is assigned a merchant category code group that will include or exclude designated merchant types according to buying requirements needed by their program or department. Unapproved category codes are restricted within the JP Morgan Smart Data System, so purchases from vendors with restricted MCCs will be declined at point of sale. Please note the exception to the rule on this slide. Sometimes we find instances of incorrect vendor MCCs. This is when a proper or approved purchase might get declined due to an incorrect merchant category code being selected by the vendor. So, if someone is away on travel for a conference and attempts to purchase dinner at a restaurant, this is an approved category and should be an approved purchase. However, if the vendor had set up their business as a bar or pub, the transaction would be declined as an unapproved MCC, since alcohol is an unapproved category. If your transaction is declined due to an MCC issue, contact one of the PCard administrators for assistance.
Now, let's discuss some procurement considerations to be mindful of: recurring payments, splitting purchases, and vendor invoices requiring signature. Recurring payments is one that may creep up on you without realizing it and is something to be careful of. Anytime we are paying the same vendor for the same good or service over time, it is considered aggregate or cumulative spend. This is something we see sometimes with website or software subscription services like Constant Contact, and these types of purchases must follow the same threshold requirements for procurement rules. It is something to be careful of because it may not be as easy to spot if you're used to just looking at your transactions each month rather than the bigger picture over the course of a year or more. Something that is more likely to be done on purpose, with more of an intentional effort to circumvent the limits of the PCard or the procurement rules, are splitting purchases. This could be done by a cardholder in an attempt to bypass the $3,000 threshold where quotes are a required additional step, or also could be attempted to complete a purchase that is over the single transaction limit for an individual card. In both examples, this is a practice that is strictly prohibited and at minimum violates policy, but depending on the amount, could also violate the local government code statutes. Finally, it's important to remember that Mr. Eastland is the only signing authority to obligate NCTCOG for payment to a vendor, so if any cost proposals or rental agreements require signature, those must be routed through legal and procurement to request Mr. Eastland's signature. While not all PCards are authorized for travel use, many of them are. Travel purchases have their own set of MCC approvals to allow purchases for travel-related categories like airfare, taxi, car rental, toll fees, lodging, and meals, though remember that tips are not allowed with meal purchases. Additionally, if a card is authorized for travel, the transaction limitation is removed for these types of purchases, and the limitation then is only the total monthly cycle limit of the card, or rather, the remaining balance after any transactions that have already gone through that month. Because of that, you'll want to make sure to check the balance of the card before traveling to ensure you have enough funds available to cover any anticipated travel expenses. The last thing anyone wants is to be out of town with a card that gets declined due to insufficient funds. If you think you may need to increase your limit to cover travel expenses, a cardholder can submit a temporary limit increase through a change request form located on the Intranet Procurement Hub. We have a couple of additional notes regarding meals, whether during travel or just for business purposes that occur outside of the NCTCOG office. All meals must be made in adherence with the GSA-approved rates as outlined in the HR personnel policy. Meals purchased for multiple employees on a single PCard should include names of all attendees and the business purpose noted on the receipt. As we have mentioned before, gratuities should not be charged to a PCard. In the event that a tip has been added to a meal, the cardholder will be responsible for reimbursing NCTCOG for the amount of the gratuity.
As a governmental entity, NCTCOG is exempt from sales tax on most purchases. Unless we have an active account with the vendor, like Amazon, Home Depot, and Office Depot, cardholders will likely need to tell or remind the vendor that we are tax exempt at the time of purchase. Sometimes you may need to submit our sales tax exemption certificate before they will flag the account as tax exempt or reimburse sales tax that has already been charged. This tax exempt form is also available on the Procurement Hub, but can be emailed to you directly by request as well. Certain purchases are not exempt from sales tax, such as hotel occupancy taxes and tax on prepared meals. These are acceptable instances to pay sales tax. There are quite a few rules issued by the comptroller surrounding sales tax, so we have also created and posted an FAQ document to the Procurement Hub PCard section as well to assist with that. So, you may be wondering what you should do if sales tax is charged in error. The first thing to note is that the cardholder is responsible for following up with the vendor to obtain a refund back to the PCard for the sales tax that was charged, and may not accept cash or store credit in lieu of a credit to the PCard. Probably the best way to summarize it is this: cardholder best practices in the instance of sales tax charged and not refunded during the same cycle period, if there are lost or missing receipts, or if multiple employee meals are paid on a single PCard is to add a note. The main goal is that the JP Morgan transaction report and the accompanying receipts should illustrate the full, clear story of each transaction for the cycle period, so that anyone reviewing the purchase history should not have to make any assumptions or inferences regarding the transactions as compared to the backup documentation. This includes review by management, your department accountant, and auditors that have no previous knowledge of the transactions.
Let's recap some of the main best practices and reminders that were covered in today's presentation. Sales tax or gratuities charged in error but not refunded in the same cycle period should be notated on the receipt with status or efforts completed to rectify. And also remember to follow up. Meals purchased for multiple employees on a single PCard should include the names of all attendees and the business purpose noted on receipt, and should not exceed the GSA rate. Be mindful of recurring payments for procurement threshold compliance. If you're unsure of using the PCard for an expenditure, just ask. It's important to note that the policy states that violations of the NCTCOG PCard policies and procedures may result in temporary or permanent revocation of PCard privileges as well as additional disciplinary action up to and including termination. This is not meant to scare you. Rather, it's a good reason to remember these best practices, and also that if you're not sure about using the PCard for any expenditure, please don't hesitate to reach out for assistance. We covered a lot of information here, and I realize that you may have some questions about one or more topics covered in the presentation. Once again, please take some time to check out the PCard resources available on the Intranet Procurement Hub, or reach out via email, Teams, or phone to discuss any items that you may be unsure of. Otherwise, at this time, please send an email confirmation to the email addresses listed here, indicating that you have completed the viewing of this presentation, and someone from the purchasing team will be in touch soon to coordinate a time for you to take possession of your PCard.
This concludes the on-demand presentation for PCard training and best practices. We appreciate your time and attention. Have a great rest of your day.